Forests are a place that I go to calm myself down, to meditate, and to reconnect with the natural rhythms of life.
I feel very at home, listening to the Lewin's honeyeaters and the crows and stuff,
Regardless of what chaos is happening, in the world, the forest is always here. You can always come here, unwind, and you know that it's going to make you feel better.
Country can silence all the head noise that's going on for you in your normal day-to-day life.
I become a different person almost. The weight of the world is off my shoulders, and I really just enjoy being out amongst the trees.
When I walk into a forest, I feel human. I feel powerful and at peace with who I am and where I am.
It's invigorating and makes you feel fresh. It's for fresh air. It's quiet.
The forest has always been a place of healing and just a place to escape to, away from some of the more modern world and the way we live today.
It brings me back to, I suppose, the natural timing of the world, and I can feel that physically, mentally and spiritually.
A forest is everything. It's our air, grocery store, chemist, the relationships that different people have with the forest, the relationships that the animals have with the forest, all the birds, all the insects, all the little microorganisms, all the fungi. Everything is everything.
We're here today in Bongal Bongal National Park. Eucalypts have evolved over millennia with a wide range of insects and fungi. Most of these insects and fungi play an important ecological role in the forest. They decompose leaf litter and recycle nutrients back into the forest. But because of this co-evolution, the trees and the pests live in some sort of balance. But when this balance is upended, pests and diseases get the upper hand and can cause significant and long-term damage. An example is a disturbance event, such as from clearing and forest fragmentation or altered fire regimes. Another form of imbalance is when you have an exotic pest or disease that's come into the country, come into a natural environment. This disease can run rampant and cause irreparable damage to the forest.
The people have gathered here in the bunyas for thousands of years. It's very iconic, the bunya tree itself, to our people, but not only to our people, but to all the other mobs that used to gather here. They travelled hundreds of kilometres in some instances, not only to indulge in the nuts themselves, but also we'd share our ceremonies, our story and trade resources, settle disputes, and was the largest gathering site known in the continent pre-colonial times. Thousands would gather here.
Bunya pines, we know them to be 200 million years old. And you definitely get the sense, when you're here, that these pines have been here for an incredibly long period of time. When some of the local rangers expressed their concern to me that some of these pines appeared to be dying in an unnatural kind of way, what might be going on? Were we just looking at some sort of natural event? Was it just chance or, coincidence?
A dead tree there. Then if you look over there, you can see the dead stalks. It'll lose its leaves, and then eventually, like there, it'll just be a half broken off trunk, and then it'll eventually fall on the ground and rot. And with the big gap in the canopy, it kind of feels like the forest is breaking. Very sad.
At which point we realised that what we were looking at was potentially a disease caused by a very, very small microscopic organism called Phytophthora, and all of a sudden we realised we might have a problem on our hands.
When these big trees fall, you get all of this understory pop up, like all your pioneer species, like your stinging trees, so it really alters the vegetation.
These are mighty trees. They're not weaklings by any stretch, and the very fact they've survived for hundreds of millions of years tells us that they are real survivors. The Phytophthora that appears to be killing them is one that's come in from somewhere else. It's an organism that they have no resistance to because they've never encountered it in hundreds of millions of years of their existence. And as mighty as they are, this tiny pathogen is killing them.
What we think has happened was in 2011 there was a huge flooding event, lots and lots of water. So Phytophthora was here, maybe brought in on someone's shoes, maybe a pig has brought it in. With that flooding event, it's allowed it to spread, disperse and establish, and it happily feeds on the roots then of the bunyas.
It's pretty devastating when you see, such unique old trees that have withstood 800 years worth of, fires and all sorts of stresses, and then now suddenly they're all dying really quickly.
You lose these bunyas, you lose a lot of our cultural history and values of this place. And
we consider these fellas as our ancestors. The country teaches us, the animals teach us. These old trees, they know the language of this country, they know the language of the old people. It is our identity that's under threat as well. Who we are, they make us who we are.
Myrtle rust was noticed in the Daintree about a decade ago, but it's really started to accelerate recently, and this back house here is actually quite recent, where it's only in recent months that parks have had to come to the level of removing and dropping trees for public safety. So this is one of the remaining trunks of a large back house here, a stone wood that was removed for safety purposes near the footpath, and you can see the size of the tree that was impacted and lost from the pathogen. So it's not just seedlings and small plants, where we're seeing mature trees of this age and caliber impacted. This area is filled with these lowland rainforest streams and creeks that meander through the lowland basins of sandy soils in particular. We've got these trees, Tristaniopsis, the water gum, that stop our erosion by stopping heavy water flow. But another really important part for these is that they have this really fibrous netting. And what you actually get is that this is a nursery for a lot of your prawns and your fish species. So it's a really high biodiverse system, like most of our streams are. And obviously a big component is that this also helps capture a lot of fine sediment. They take nutrients up, which then helps your water quality before it passes down into the reef and the mangroves and impacts on everyone's fishing or the pristine Great Barrier Reef. As we lose these species and they die back, we not only lose their roots, but we also lose a lot of the canopy. And so it allows more light to come through, which can warm up the water potentially. Different lighting also impacts what plants and animals can survive in these environments. And we just don't know what kind of flow-on effects that can have at a larger scale in particular. So it's really concerning to see that a lot of these major waterways through the wet tropics having this decline.
I work in the Environmental Biosecurity Office. We have a main focus on exotic and emerging pests, weeds and diseases entering Australia and preventing that from happening. This can be achieved through enhancing and creating partnerships and collaborating on land management actions to back up the work being done at the border. Preventing the introduction and spread of pests, weeds and diseases is crucial, but further awareness and understanding of what biosecurity means to Australia can be just as valuable in order to protect and conserve our land and seas, but also our culture and our way of life for generations to come.
Myrtle rust is widespread in New Zealand. It's really having some really big effects on some of our more vulnerable species, and we are really deeply concerned that we're going to lose those from the landscape.
We're here to come together and to learn from each other, to try and invigorate those things that have been lost, come up with ways and solutions, and to look at how other people do things.
Beautiful to listen to these stories. There's so much resonates with our culture as Māori. And I think central to all of those stories is the connection to the land.
So our old people called this place Nigi Nigi, and so it's Nigi Nigi in our language means charcoalish, and because of this particular area was subject to fire regimes that our old people had practiced for thousands of years, and that's how we managed our country and looked after it. We lived in the bush, so we had to.
In terms of forests, our traditional stories tell us a lot about what the forest provides and the importance of sustainability. That as humans, if we are to take from the forest, we need to be giving back.
It's about bringing, incorporating those cultural practices, because, those practical things are important ways to pass on the story of conservation and how to do it, passing it on to young people and children, put it into a dance, put it into a story, put it into a song.
It makes us who we are. It's our identity as Australians, not only as Indigenous Australians, but Australians. Our culture, our way of living outdoors, our adventurous personality types, our unique mammals, our unique creatures, so they all need to be protected.
Bringing up those future generations to care about country and really seek out that knowledge to really preserve what we have before it's lost.
I want everyone to know about these exotic pests and pathogens. I want everyone to know about them, be on the lookout for them, and doing whatever they can to stop the spread of them.
We're going to sit back in circles with other agencies, Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, because we all have that common goal to make a united front.
Our approach has been first to reconnect, because we acknowledge that through this modern world, we've disconnected ourselves from nature in a lot of ways, and particularly our forests. If you bring that back to a human level, that's the importance of exchanges like this, is connecting with other people, other forms of knowledge, because it's my belief that there's, through that process, I suppose it's like the trees, the birds and the bees, there's some cross-pollination that creates a new magic that helps to ensure that we sustain ourselves and we sustain this natural world.
We really need to get armies of people to work together for the biosecurity of this country, to understand and value traditional ways and complement that with Western science, so we work together and get better outcomes for country. Because without country, there's nothing.